Welcome to my first video with my peaked sourdough starter. It's a brand new starter that I started a week ago. This is technically its second peak, but the first one I chalked up to the warm temperatures in the house from doing quite a bit amount of baking. So for this, all you're going to need is salt, whatever your preference is. You're going to need your peaked sourdough starter. You're going to need bread flour. I use unbleached King Arthur bread flour. I get mine at Costco. They also sell it at Sam's at a really great price. We are going to need a bowl, our scale, very, very important. We are going to need this special flat whisk. Now you don't have to have it, but it is very, very helpful when incorporating everything, mixing it together. And then I just have this measuring cup, and I'm going to fill this with water. So we are going to get started. And this is actually very, very easy and simple to do. This recipe is probably the simplest, easiest recipe that you will ever have to encounter. So what we're going to do is turn on our scale, make sure it's on a flat surface, and you want to make sure your unit is grams. If you are not at grams, then unfortunately what's going to happen is you're just going to mess up the ratio. And if you had it on grams last time, something could have happened to change it. So make sure, if you're not seeing the little G in the corner, then you want to hit the unit button until it gets to grams. And then you want to use a glass bowl. I've used metal before, and it's okay, but glass is preferred. And we're going to put the glass bowl in there and zero everything out. We're going to do 500 grams of flour, and I'm just taking it from this bag and measuring. Oop, all right. Somehow that was exactly 500 grams. We're going to do 90 grams of our starter. If your starter is not fully robust and bubbling like mine is, you can either add a little bit extra or you can do some yeast. We're not doing yeast in this recipe, but if you were to, instead of using room temperature water, you would want to do warm water, not hot but warm. And I would say you can do a cup and then 3 tablespoons of yeast. Quick rising is good, and they're not very expensive. Or you can do a packet of yeast that you can get at the store and mix them together. Let them sit for maybe 5 minutes to let it bloom before you add it in. And the cup of water would come out of your total amount of grams of water. But you would do that and kind of set it off to the side. That helps for everything to rise. In this recipe, we're not doing it. There are some sourdough people that do swear by adding the yeast, but kind of the whole purpose of sourdough is the way it ferments. You don't have to add yeast. So, like I said, we're zeroing it out. I have this spatula so I can kind of mix everything back in together. Let's keep going. 90. All right. If you go a little bit over, that is okay. And by a little bit, I mean a few extra grams of the sourdough starter is fine. You can always add a little bit more flour. If you add a lot more, that's when you're going to need to pull it out and adjust. And if you're worried about adding too much to your stuff, you can always measure in separate containers and then put them all together. So the next thing we're going to do is our salt, and we're going to do 12 grams. So I'm just going to put some in. You kind of want to find a central location around the same spot to add it into. We're adding the salt before adding the water because it's easier to get the right weight. If you add in liquid, it's very easy for it to kind of get muddled. Okay, I'm at 11. almost there. I'm just adding tiny pinches. Okay, now we're at 12 grams. I'm going to set that off to the side, zero this out. We're going to add about 385 grams of water. I'm using it purified because of where I'm at. So we're just going to start with a cup. Alright. They say it's about a cup and 1/7. Sometimes it ends up because it's weight and not actual volume. It's not always going to be the same. Alright. Okay, oh, perfect. All right, so then I'm going to take it off of the scale and set this off to the side. And you're just going to use this, you're going to put it in flat and mix, 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 mix. And you're going to see that's going to start incorporating, and that is exactly what we want. This flat mixer is great because you can scrape off the sides and make sure that nothing is sticking and that you're able to incorporate everything. It is heavy enough for you to be able to lift from underneath and pull it up. And it is almost fully incorporated. Do not worry if it doesn't look like a traditional ball of dough, because we are going to do a few stretch and folds with this. So I'm just going to take this off and I'm going to show you all of the stretch and fold. So what you're going to want to do next is let this sit. I do 15 minutes and I am going to set it off to the side. I'm going to cover it. I have these really thin cloths that I bought. I'm just going to set that on top and just let it sit for 15 minutes and then we'll do our stretch and fold. Alright, so it has been 15 minutes. We're going to do our first stretch and fold. Your dough may be a little bit sticky, and if it is, which mine is just a little bit, don't worry. If it's too sticky, then you might have added too much water, not enough flour to it, and you can remedy that. We'll do another video another day, kind of showing how to fix that. But if you follow the ratios of grams, exactly how I said, you should have no problem. So there are a couple of different ways you can do stretch and folds, and this is the way that I like to do it, where you basically just put your hand under one side and make sure your hands are clean, and you're just going to pull up and tuck it over, and then we're just going to do the same exact thing. You're literally just stretching out the dough and folding it over. We're just pulling and folding, and then we're going to do one more on this side, and then we are once again going to cover this and set a timer for 15 minutes. As you've noticed, I've cleaned things up. I had taken the sourdough starter, since I'm doing my one loaf and probably won't do any baking for a few days, and I've completely covered it and stuck it in the fridge. You can do that for about a week without having to feed it. So if you don't plan on using it for a week, there's no need to keep it out and feed it every day. You can just stick it in the fridge and then pull it out. And when you do your first feeding, you want to make sure to do a lukewarm water versus cold. But we'll be back in a few minutes and do our second set of stretch and folds. Okay, we're going to do our second stretch and fold exactly like we did before. We're just going to pull it up and stretch it as far as we can. Take it over. We want to try and scoop as much from the bottom as we can. All right. Okay. that's done, I am going to, sorry, I'm rinsing off my hand. This little tea towel that I have, it's very thin towel. I'm actually going to immerse it in water and just get it as wet as I can. And the reason for that being is we are going to cover this for about 12 hours and let it sit and do its first fermenting. So we're basically wanting it to rise. We want it to double in size, and it is very easy for it to get dried out. So I like to do a wet rag on the bottom and then just a dry one that's going over it, because we're trying to make sure that we're not getting any air into there, not a whole lot of excessive air, and no bugs or anything like that. So I do the double, and it's going to help prevent it from drying out. If your dough is a little bit on the wetter side, you're not going to need to do that step. I would just put a couple of towels over it, and then we're just going to set it off to the side and leave it alone. And I like to do this at night and put it off to the side before I go to bed. And then when I wake up the next morning is when you do the next steps. You can also do it first thing in the morning and let it sit all day if you don't have time in the morning to deal with it. So I will see you guys in about 12 hours. All right, so it's been about 12 hours since I made my loaf of sourdough that's been doing its proofing. And as you can see, it looks very vibrant. It's bubbling a little bit, but that's all good. It's all a part of the process. So what you're going to need for this next step is going to just be some flour. I'm just using my unbleached bread flour because I have the most of that. You're going to need a basket of sorts. This one is round. The size or the shape of the basket is going to depend on the shape of the Dutch oven that you're using. I am going to use a round Dutch oven, so I'm going to use a round basket. There are plastic ones that you can get. This one is not. This one is woven, and there are websites you can go to get them for not a lot of money to get handcrafted ones or ones that are made by small businesses. You can also find them on Amazon. All right. And then the last thing you're going to need is some white rice flour. And the reason for this is we're going to wet this down and then do the rice flour. And it prevents your dough from sticking. Trust me, you are going to want to use the rice flour. I've tried regular flour and it just does not work the same. So I'm going to set these two off to the side. We are going to lightly flour our surface. Nothing too crazy. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of flour on my hands. My hands are clean. And we're just going to pull everything out of here and put it all on the floured surface. If your dough is still a little bit on the wetter side, you can use a bench scraper to help you. All right. I'm just going to set that in the sink, and I'm just going to put a little bit of flour on top. And what I'm going to do, there are many different ways that you can shape your dough. I'm just going to do a rectangle and kind of like stretch everything out, and then I am going to do a roll. I'm going to just roll here and pull. And then I'm going to fold it into a circle, and just want to make sure that we're kind of like taking the ends and twisting them, pinching, and then rolling together because we are trying to create the shape of a circle. So I'm just going to turn and pull. So you're going this way and pulling to get our circle shape. You want to make sure that you're not pushing down on it. We're trying to get some height, and that's going to help us with the cold bulk fermentation. So next we're just going to wet our basket. And you don't necessarily want to soak it. We're just going to get it a little bit wet. That's going to help the rice to stick. The rice flour, I should say, to stick. So this is what it looks like. It is a little bit wet. I'm kind of going to shake it. And then my hands are wet, so I'm going to dry them off. We don't want the flour to stick to my hands. We want them to get into the basket. So I'm just going to put this forward so you can see better. Turn it kind of like this and just sprinkle the flour. And we're just going to keep turning. Get the flour around, and then we're just kind of going to spread it. I'm trying to do my best to make it so you can see. Sprinkling some in the bottom because I know that was missed. These wicker baskets are very, very easy to clean. You just wash them, and some of them come with a little scrub brush that you can use, or you can just get a brush and then you wash them and let them dry all the way, or let the oven help out. Okay, so I've gotten this pretty much all the way floured, and then I'm just going to take my sourdough and put it in just like that. And then we're going to stick this in the fridge for a couple of hours and let it bulk ferment in the fridge. It should rise and like get to the top. You can also leave it in the fridge for up to 3 days. If you're going to leave it in the fridge for more than the 2 to 3 hours, you want to make sure that you cover it. And I would take the towel again and wet it all the way and make sure that you're wrapping it so moisture can't get in, because otherwise it will dry out. If too much air gets in and too much moisture from the fridge and everything, it will dry out. Just like that. And then we're going to stick it in the fridge for 2 to 3 hours until it bulk ferments, or cold ferments. We did our bulk ferment last night. Now you can leave this in the fridge for up to 3 days. If you're not ready to bake it, you can leave it in. The longer you leave it in the fridge, I have found the better it tastes, but you have to make sure that you're doing it correctly. So if you're going to stick this in the fridge for more than 2 to 3 hours, I would suggest that you take a cloth, and just like we did with the bulk ferment on the counter, you're going to want to get this wet, and not soaking wet, but very damp, and cover it and make sure that it seals. That way when it's in the fridge, you're not having a whole bunch of air getting to it, and the air getting to it is going to make it dry, and we don't want it dry. Right now we have a nice and non-dry loaf. When it gets dry, it just gets extra crusty before you've even baked it, and it can ruin the texture of your bread. So that's why I suggest doing. If not, you can just put it in like this. I do like to cover it in the fridge just because I want to make sure that if something spills, nothing is getting on it. So we're going to stick this in the fridge for a couple of hours and come back, and I will show you the next step. So I have had my dough in the fridge now for about 5 hours. I just kind of left it in there for a while I went and did other things. So we're going to place the dough in the center, or as close to the center as we can, of this parchment paper, and then we're going to score it. I'm going to have everything listed that you will need in the comments section or the description. So check those out. I'll link stuff in the comment section and have it in the description. All right, so ours has these little ridge design inside of it, and that comes from our basket. If you don't want that and you want it completely smooth, then you can just add a towel into the basket, one that doesn't have any kind of design to it. And we're going to use the scoring knife to score it. You can do anything that you want in it. The one score you want to make sure that you have is something that goes along from one side to the other. And the reason for that is we are going to allow for steam to get out. And that's how you cook it all the way through. If you don't do this step, it's going to open up on its own. And you have no control over what it's going to look like. So it is better for you to just kind of do it yourself. And I'm just going to kind of do like a crisscross on top here. You can, like I said, do whatever kind of design that you want. I've done hearts in some of them. I've done initials. Now, while this was in the fridge, about an hour before I wanted to start baking, I put my Dutch oven into the oven with the oven preheated at 500. Now, you can preheat your oven to 500 with the Dutch oven inside. That's usually what I do. But you want to have it in there for about an hour, because what we're doing is getting the Dutch oven hot. Now, the other thing that you are going to need, aside from the Dutch oven, is you're going to need a meat thermometer, because you want to take the internal temperature of your bread, and you want to make sure that the internal temperature of your bread gets to over 220 degrees. So we're going to pop this in the oven inside of our Dutch oven with the lid on for 20 or 25 minutes is where I like to start, and I like to go in and check the coloring and the temperature and then determine what I do next. Okay, so I just did another 10 minutes. I'm going to pull this out and take the lid off of it. It is starting to get some really great color. Once again, I'm going to stick in my meat thermometer, and it is slightly above. I believe I said it needed to get over 220 earlier. It actually needs to get over 205, which is where it is currently at. So I'm going to keep the lid off, and I'm actually going to put it back in for just a couple more minutes to get some more color. So we're going to set the timer for about 2 minutes, and we'll be back. So I just pulled my bread out of the oven. It is very, very hot. I use my oven mitts to help put it on this rack. Underneath, I have a towel. That's a little hack that I have for any crumbs that fall off. It's a lot easier to just have them in a towel and shake the towel over the trash or in the sink than to have to clean everything off. But look at how beautiful and gorgeous this is. I will cut into it once it is fully cooled, and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so our loaf has fully cooled down, and we are going to cut it. And I'm going to show you the center. Boop, 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 boop. Usually I don't let them cool all the way before I cut it because, well, it's sourdough bread and absolutely delicious. Okay. Look at that. Is so good. I'm just going to rip off a piece of this. If you make your own loaf, Leave a comment and let me know how it went. Let me know if you have any questions, any tips or tricks that I did not already share. And happy sourdough!